Hi everyone, today is October 14th, 2017, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is GreenRanger.
And I'm DeckTech.
And this week, not a whole lot has been going on. We've seen the release of Bonz this week, sort of near the middle, and we've both been playing the game quite a bit, and DeckTech here has actually played the game to such a high level, he hasn't played the game. Why don't you explain to everyone what happened?
Was this news? I don't remember if I did this in the last week or not.
I don't know. Yeah, it was within the last week.
Oh, okay. Well, I should have put it in there then. My bad. So I hit King of Games shortly after we recorded last time. Now it's coming back to me. Last time, as you guys might recall, we were discussing the various forms of Cyber Angels, and we talked about the mind scan skill as a possible way to use it instead of the other ones. And I had been using restart, but kind of while we were discussing the various skills and stuff, I talked myself into switching to mind scan because I wasn't using the actual restart very frequently. The deck has a lot of redundancy, so it didn't need to have a mulligan all that often. And so I switched up my list a tiny bit. I added a Sonic Bird, whereas before I had only been using the Senjus, and to give myself a little bit more of the inherent redundancy. And then I switched to Mind Scan and immediately won, I think, 10 in a row or something like that. I got right up to King of Games after doing that. So it was massively successful, and since then, like you said, I haven't really played a ton. I've been playing kind of off-meta and unrefined things since, just to play around, but also because I need to kind of get my super rare and earn some gems and stuff. Got a little campaign going on now. So the big story is King of Games, and I've been dirtling around since then.
It was your fastest one, right? Because you got it in 30 games.
It was my fastest, but I don't think it was quite that fast. I'm pretty sure I got it in 45. So definitely a personal record. And I think a couple other people are doing it in that range. And there was some, people on Reddit and stuff who are doing it faster. So it's not like breaking any records or anything, but I'm pretty happy with it. That's way faster than I've done it before.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, how about you? What are you up to?
Yeah, I think you told me about it, and then I started playing the deck, but as everyone knows, well, as some people know, my version only has one of each of the searchers, so I only have one Senju and one Sonic Bird, and I didn't really feel like getting it. So then, Monday I was defeated by a 5-headed dragon on turn 2, by a Taya standby, dual standby. You may have seen it on Twitter, but then I decided to play Ojamas after that for some reason. And then I went to Plat 1, so Plat 4, Plat 1, and I wasn't really playing the game much, but then I learned, I was watching some Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and they keep talking about how you need to have fun, so I'm playing Magnet Warriors now, off some recommendation on some guy on Reddit. It's the Tie That Binds version, and the point he made is that having monsters in the graveyard actually helps Magnet Warriors, and it does help get the Valkyrian out in some situations. But, I'm winning a bit. I'm not winning a ton, but I am climbing back to Plat 3. I'm just trying to get the wins, honestly, and get to Legend. I don't really care about getting King of Games anymore. You just get it once, and I just don't care about it. That's just me, but I'm close to 40 wins, so I do have to catch up a bit in the win department to get the extra SR tickets.
Yeah, I think this month I'm probably just going to get the 61.
60, yeah.
Yeah, I've played 4 games of PvP since I hit King of Games, so it's weird because you get it so early, you're like, oh, all right, I made this cool accomplishment, I'm such a good player and whatever, not listening to the devil on your shoulder telling you that it's just because the deck was busted. But then you have this weird double-edged sword where you want to be excited about your accomplishment, but then now that you're there, you don't feel like playing PvP anymore, and you're missing out on rewards if you don't. So I kind of almost wish it were a harder climb, but in the end, I'm glad I made it because of the KC Cup. Are you not planning to compete?
KC Cup. When is that again?
I think it's next month, right? And then it said if you hit King of Games this month or next month, then you get invited, to the next phase of it. And obviously, neither you nor I are going to be situated to compete to be like number 1 or number 2 in the region and earn our way to Worlds or anything like that. But they did have prizes just for kind of competing and doing fairly well. Last time, there was a top 1,000 prize that was pretty, like within each region, that was pretty attainable for people who were like, semi-serious, semi-hardcore. I think that's what I got last time by playing a good amount, more than I would normally play, but not like losing sleep or skipping days of work like some of the people. And then there was also a 10,000 last time, which was very obtainable for people who are, playing a solid amount, who are good players, have good decks, but aren't going nuts.
Yeah, so, I think I got 10,000. You got 1,000 last time, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So, you should do that. If you don't hit King of Games this time, then you have to hit it next time.
Oh man, I hit it the wrong month.
Yeah, missed your boat.
Missed my boat. I guess I might have to play Red Eye Zombie again if I it hasn't hit me yet how serious the situation is. If I evaluate it to be serious, I will switch back. But right now, I'm not feeling it right now, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you got to have fun, because otherwise it's work, and it's not going to go as well if you're like slogging through it. Yeah,
so we'll see. And of course, there's going to be a new card soon, so we'll see what comes up with that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. Okay, let's talk about news this week in esports. Last week we mentioned how the Duel Links Pro Tournament number 7. It's a weekly event, well, mostly a weekly event that we'll start covering. We talked about who won the game last week, and that was Koizumi. But they have more statistics from their Discord about the tournament. As you guys recall, there were 64 participants with 2 decks each, so there's 2 different skills and 2 different characters. So there were a total of 128 decks played. Of the 128, 39 were Red Eye Zombie, 32 were Cyber Angels, and 13 were Burned. So those were the big ones. It's pretty interesting that Red Eye Zombie is still number 1 in this big format, despite the splash that Cyber Angels made. I mean, they jumped to number 2 in almost an even split, but they're still number 1. I guess it's like a comfort level in what people have, I guess, and they have a better collection of Red Eye Zombie, maybe. Yeah. And the other decks, there were 8 Hazy Flame Sphinx decks, 7 Control decks, 5 Gandora, Red Eyes, Monster Morph. I didn't know that was a whole deck. 4 Relinquished, 4 Ninjas, 2 of each Plant Psychics, Blue Eyes, White Dragon, and Phoenix, and 1 of each of these Venus, Dark Paladin, Mausoleum, Last Gamble, Desert Twister, Magnet Warriors, Horus, Mill, and Dinosaurs. The most common combinations were 2 Red Eyes decks. So I guess you would go to a balance and a beatdown version. The second most common was 2 Cyber Angel decks. That's what the winner brought. And of the 4 Ninja players, 1 Control Ninjas got second, and the 3-star Demotion player got 7th. The only Mausoleum player came in 3rd. More than 4 Burn players made it into the top 8. So the Burn version is mostly I'd say the Amazon one, right? I think I saw some of the Amazon deck.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So, we're gonna cover the future tournaments, but this is basically what the competitive meta looks like right now. It's pretty cool that some people brought some of these, like one each of these other decks, but Psychics seem to have fallen pretty low. Ice Barriers are gone. I don't see Naturias. It's just like a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and the Ninjas have switched around a bit as well. For a while, they were 3-star Demotion. I know there was at least the one that we mentioned, but I think most Ninja players are switching to the more control variant, as they call it.
It's cheaper. It's very cheap.
Yeah. the mausoleum was like big for a while, and now there's just the one. A lot of people thought Horus would be the deck to counter the Cyber Angels, and it's not. There's only one there, so I guess not that many people thought it was worth even trying to do that. And the Gandora Red Eyes Monster Morph deck is it's a really cool deck, and when I first saw it, I think on Reddit or something, I thought it was just a meme deck, but I guess it's solid enough that a lot of these top players are, I mean, not a lot, 5, but they thought enough to bring it.
The 30, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to explain it a little bit, the way that it works is you use Monster Morph is Mokuba's ability, which reads, can be used each time your life points decrease by 1,500. Once per turn, send one monster on your side of the field except a token. Not sure if that's a typo on Game A's part or in the game's part, but you send that monster to the graveyard, I believe, to summon one random monster that is allowed to be normal summoned from your deck, whose attribute and type are the same as the one that you have sent to the graveyard, but the level is 1 higher than the tributed monster. So your Red Eyes is a 7-star, of course, as we know, dark monster, and Gandora is an 8-star dark monster. So you can, and they're both dragons, right?
Dragons,
it has to be type and attribute. So yeah, and they're both dragons. So what you can do is you can cheat out Red Eyes, play it like a normal Red Eyes deck, and you have this possibility to then use the Gandora to clear the field, clear the way for your Red Eyes, so that you can attack in, get that final blow through Gandora, I guess, itself, or like setting up a 2-turn play with the Red Eyes. So it's really interesting. I like the deck a lot. This list that they have on Game A is not kind of what I've been seeing other people running. So I don't know if it's the best representation of the deck, but there's a lot of cool stuff going on. There's still some, as we can see from this, some kind of adaptations in the meta. So it's cool to see that stuff.
Your Monster Morph explanation just triggered something of how you get out another card, which we'll discuss later. We were just talking about this before the show. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sneaky.
Yep. All right. And these are some of the upcoming tournaments for Decade's Duel Links meta. The Meta Championship Series number 3 is happening in 1.5 hours from now. So 1 p.m. Eastern Time. They have over $2,100 in prize support, with the winner getting over $1,000. There's a lot of the familiar players you see in his Discord, but they also have new players like Guns Blazing, who is one of the most popular YouTube guys for Duel Links. And there's a professional Super Smash Brothers player. I don't think it's called Super Smash Brothers anymore, or I don't know what the newest one's called, but he is playing Duel Links now. And there's also another tournament, the Duel Links Meta Subscriber Tournament. They received gifts from Konami. There's a video of them unboxing the gifts, but it has a really cool wooden box, and there's some other stuff in it, like playmats, posters, card packs, card boxes, and they're going to have like a tournament just for subscribers of their Discord, and the winner would get the whole box.
Right. And they, of course, was Decade and Gia from, or Gianna, whatever her name, the girlfriend, who run the meta championships as well, run the Duel Links meta. So they're putting on both of those events.
If you got that box, well, what would you do with it? Could you take that to court if you got like, if you put like a handle on it?
I don't know. I don't know if there's like rules on what your briefcase is. I've been using like a messenger bag, but that's that's because I'm a millennial or whatever. I don't know if we're actually millennials, but anyway, people used briefcases for a long time, so I don't know why a wooden briefcase wouldn't be allowed.
Yep. All right. we're going to talk about the main event this week, and it's been a really quiet week. So this is actually the main event is getting some guy who appeared in 2 episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh to give us new cards, and that's Bonz. It kind of fits the Halloween theme. It's not Halloween yet, but fits the theme. People wanted him in the game for quite a while, I'd say. He's probably behind Tristan or in Duke Devlin in people wanting them in the game, but people wanted him in the game. And it's a bit disappointing. The rewards, we talked about all the rewards last week. They were all data mined, so we got them all. They're not particularly exciting, but we're going to talk about farming. I mean, you never know. It's good to get the cards anyways, as I learned from Super Joey. Not having any Red Eyes Insight until last month kind of prevented me from playing Red Eyes for a really long time. So we're going to talk about farming. He's pretty easy to farm compared to past events. What have you been using?
Right, and before we get into that, actually, I was just reminded by your reading that there is one chase prize for farming Bonz, and that is the sleeves and the playmat. People are pretty hyped about that. So you have to use Joey Wheeler to get those, I guess, looking at these.
No damage. For 3 games with no damage for the board. Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to switch my tactics and start using that. But my current tactics are to use the Labyrinth Builder. It's actually the exact same list that I had already been using, I think, for Alexis, and which was only just a slightly tweaked version of the Lab Builder that I've been using since, forever. It's just the typical farming method that we've been doing for a long time, and I just kind of update it a little bit as needed for each person who I'm farming. But like I said, this time I didn't really have to update it. So just to give a really quick rundown, because we already know what this deck is if we've been listening. Lab Builder, of course, allows you to shuffle 2 cards from your hand into your deck to create a Labyrinth Wall, which is a 0/3000. And then you use Dimension Gate to remove it from play, which kind of protects it from removal. I don't even know if that part's necessary against Bonz. I haven't tested it or anything. And I'm using Acidic Downpour to make the wall a little bit tougher, 400 extra defense. And then that allows you to stall for the whole game, play a couple card draw things so that you deck out before he does. And then at the very last turn, you use Storm to clear his back row. You put the wall in attack mode, and then you use Shield and Sword. You special summon Fiend Mega Cyber, and then you normal summon the Vassal, and you use 2 Union attacks and the Secret Pass to Treasures, so that you can attack directly for over 10,000. So it's a really simple farm, one that we've been doing for a long time. So we'll post this list in the show notes, but it shouldn't surprise anyone. We've seen essentially this list a couple times now.
Yep. So I'm doing the other version. I do have Lab Builder, but I don't have Shield and Sword. And you know me, I'm too lazy to farm Joey. So I'm using the Skillless Silent Magician deck. And you could use this with any character because you're not using any skills. And with this, I actually got last gamble with Joey when I was going for the 3 the cardboard. So I mean, I don't know if not having a skill has an effect on getting the dual skills, but it worked for me. I also got Kaiba Bling with Mokuba, who I'm using right now. So you could use it with anyone who you don't have a skill. I might switch to Yugi because I still don't have Destiny Draw. I'm morally against Destiny Draw, but I might just get it anyways. But what this skillless deck does is there's 3 copies of each of these cards: Magical Mallet, Silent Magician, Level Up, and Crystal Seer. So this is 12 cards. And Magical Mallet is basically a restart, so you could fish for 1 Silent Magician and 1 Level Up. And it's a pretty good chance you get it. If you don't have those cards, you get Crystal Seer in defense mode. And once the level 8 is out, nothing can beat level 8. His magic cards don't affect it. And by magic cards, I mean Nightmare Steel Cage and Pump Princess. And the main trick you look at for is Crass Clown, because it has a bounce ability, so he puts it in defense mode and then he flips it up, and that'll send your Silent Magician back to your hand, and that's what you don't want. So, typically you have to destroy his face-down monsters, but if you do have Gravity Axe, you don't have to destroy anything. So once you have Silent Magician plus Gravity Axe, that's the game. And Pump Princess is notable because it actually has it subtracts below 0. I don't know if you knew this, but there was a game where there were 2 Pump Princesses out. I had level 8, a regular Silent Magician, and Vassal. So the level 4 and the Vassal had 0 attack points, but when you do the Union attack, I had 3 Union attacks. The total attack was less than 10,000 because it's subtracted below 0. So that's something you have to look out for. Storm is a good card to use against the Pump Princess. So you have extra level ups or extra mallets you could use Storm on. Storm's also useful for Nightmare Steel Cage if he puts it in the end phase. I mean, in the last 2 turns, so the Vassal can't attack. So know when to use your Storm. Otherwise, Silent Magician is not affected by Nightmare Steel Cage, so you can keep attacking his face-down monsters. Yeah, and I run 3 Union attacks because sometimes you just have the 1 level 8, so the other monsters are either dead or they have 0 negative attack points from the Pump Princess. So 3 Union attacks with Silent Magician level 8 should be enough for 10,000. Also, it's a bad idea to leave a monster in attack mode because he could use Wonder Balloons and subtract it, and you could take massive damage from getting hit. So, yeah, it works pretty well. I have a pretty high rate with it, and I've been getting skills. So, pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to switch to your method. My method, I've only lost once so far. I don't know if that makes it a slightly better win rate, but the ability to do yours without any skills makes it a big advantage in my opinion, because there's a couple skills that I'm still trying to farm, almost a year after the fact. And like you said, to get the playmat and the card backs, which are kind of like the real prizes here. You need to use Joey, so I'm excited.
Yep. And there's been some speculation that Bonz is coming as a playable character at some point. He's talking about dipping his toe in the water or something like that because he was scared of people. Scared of Bakura mostly because he killed him in real life. It's unclear if he comes as a surprise gift at the end or some other time, but we know he's not the next legendary duelist who's coming to GX World at the end of this month. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I'm not expecting him at the end of this event because of the Rex Raptor event, where you kept talking about this card for Pegasus to make, and then we never get it. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, so it's like it's a next time thing, which is what it's not quite what they did with Mokuba, but they had Mokuba come a couple times, and then eventually we got him. So Bonz is probably going to be the same thing, where he's going to come maybe one more time, and then at the end of that one, you get him, or something like that.
It's kind of like Merrick. Merrick was teased for a really long time. I think there was an interaction with a Shizu and Bakura. But when Bakura first showed up, he says Merrick's still around. And then it's like 6 months later, he's finally in the game or something. Yeah. All right. We have a link on Reddit about the thread of Bonz being a playable character. Maybe we'll get more of the zombie support of the cards we get, because they're not too useful at the moment. But it's good to get them anyways.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a lot of people wanted Call of the Haunted. That would have been a really good card to get. I don't think it would have been OP in this format.
I don't actually remember what it does.
It's basically Monster Reborn, but it's a trap card, and if you destroy the trap, they're gone. So.
Yeah, I think it would have been better than the other stuff we're seeing now, but
yeah,
it would have at least given him something good to give us.
Yeah, not that the Pumpkin's just the worst card ever. Like, there's no reason to play that card.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna talk about the Card Trader update. there are 3 new cards that were given to the card trader. Let's talk about the bad ones first.
Okay.
Block Golem. This is an SR rock type. Where is he? 10. I'll just read it off my memory. He's a 4-star, 1,000, 1,500, and his ability is you can tribute him and send 2 level 4 or lower rock types from your graveyard and special summon them to the field. So basically, you get a 1 monster advantage. You're giving up him to get 2 rock types on the field. This does help out with Magnet Warriors if you're trying to summon Valkyrian from your hand. So if you have the Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, you can summon him from your hand. The problem is that I've been playing Magnet Warriors this month, so I'm this week, so I kind of do know about it. It's not as good as the Delta effect. So the Delta effect is if you have 3 Magnet Warriors in your graveyard and Delta gets destroyed, you can special summon him straight from your deck. And Delta can send another Delta to the graveyard, and that could just trigger the Valkyrian. So you could get like a 2 monsters on the board, a Delta and a Valkyrian. And this method is just worse. A worse way, because you're bringing stuff back from the graveyard, which you don't want. Another use is bringing back Goggle Golem, so you could use the Gemini ability, but no one really plays Goggle Golem, so that's that.
Yeah.
Ganogo, 1350, 1600 rock type. Whenever it battles a monster and at the end of the battle phase, the damage step, the monster switches to face down defense, I believe, right?
Definitely defense. I don't know if it's face down or not. Let me see.
I should have looked up the cards today. Face down defense, yeah.
Yeah.
So, this isn't too useful, I guess. Is there no the ninja only destroys them when they're in face up defense mode.
Right. So I could think of a couple uses. One of them is as a very budget Sphere Karibo. We're always talking about budget Sphere Karibos, but
this guy's a ball too, so
right, yeah. If you play this in defense mode, then you don't take damage from an attack, and your opponent's monster ends up in defense position. So it's kind of like a Sphere Karibo, but it's significantly worse because you're telegraphing your play. You're by playing something face down as opposed to just having something in your hand, and it allows them a chance to respond in that they can use any sort of removal, like Tribute of the Doomed or something like that, to avoid it. And it takes up your summon, whereas Sphere Karibo does not. And it can't protect other monsters. It can only protect your life. So all of that is to say that it's a very poor substitute, and I would not recommend it. I would just say you don't use a card with that effect. So that's one use, although not a suggested one. And another use, I guess, would be kind of offensively, where if they have something big, you can tank this into it and sacrifice a bit of your life points for the ability to switch their big thing into defense position to make it easier to take down by something else. There are a lot of monsters that are significantly weaker in defense position than in attack position. So there's a little bit there, but a lot of those monsters, I'm trying to, you would just use enemy controller, except for, I guess, Silent Magician or Horus, because you can't use magics on them. But other than those guys, I think you would just use the Econ, and since those guys aren't that common, you would just use Econ in your deck overall. So I'm not buying the Gonogos, even though they're only normals or whatever ends mean, because I just don't see how those are going to see any play.
So I guess it's a card for people who just started the game, maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
well, they have to pay gold. They have to pay gold to get them.
But it's pretty cheap. I think it's got some place for new players.
I don't know if this even costs gold. I bought 3 of these. I think it just costs like 2 Earth Stones or something.
Oh, really? It's even cheap.
I don't know if it costs. It might cost a few gold, like 1,000 or something, but it's really cheap. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna talk about the good card, maybe good card. You are trap card Tiki Soul, Continuous Trap. Special summon. This card is an effect monster, rock type light, 4 4 stars, 1,000, 1,800. This card is also a trap card. So it's a trap monster. While this card is an effect monster, if another trap card you control that is a monster would be destroyed by your opponent's a card by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can set it again in the spell or trap zone. So right now there's 2 other cards that do this, and that's Embodiment of Apophis, which puts a 1,600, 1,800 reptile, and Machine King 3000 BC, which puts out a 1,000, 1,000 machine. So these are other trap monsters that exist, and you could basically keep recycling them as long as this stays up on the board. I think it works for itself, right? Oh, another trap. So it's like it's a different... It only works for those guys, right?
I'm not sure if another means with a different name or just a different card. Like if you have 2 Tiki Souls, can they save each other?
I'm thinking they can.
At least the first one saves the second one.
Let's see. Yeah, go ahead and talk about it. I'll read the card rulings and see if they talk about that.
Go ahead and talk about it. That's
the other use for it, I guess. The tributes.
Oh, yeah. I was sorry. I was thinking another interesting way to do it would be to use it as like tribute fodder in the same way that we would use the frogs or Amaryllis in like Monarch decks. So to cheat out like a 1 tribute guy. Now that we have a lot of these trap monsters, they're free monsters, and so it makes it a lot easier to summon those 1 tribute dudes.
Yeah, the rulings don't state about the other ones, so I assume it does work. Like if there's a second Tiki Soul, I think it would work. Alright, so then we're going to talk about the next mini box that's coming out, and this was teased on a website. It was I think it was in Japanese. I forget, but the next mini box is called Servant of the Kings, and that's coming in the middle of October, and we're already in the middle of October from what I could tell. So maybe next week, next Thursday, maybe this box is coming. And 2 cards were leaked from this whole box, but the name Servant of the Kings, what do you think about that name?
It sounds like that whole Egyptian stuff that they frequently do in the show.
Which cards are Egyptian? The Gravekeepers.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, they do serve a king. So maybe a lot of people are clamoring for Gravekeepers to come back, and I would like to see them come back. I was one of the first people. No, I wasn't one of the first people, but it was like the first main deck I played, even though I barely have the cards. I would like to see him come back. And there's a lot of Gravekeeper cards that have not been released in the game yet. So the first card is a pretty notable one, and that's Dark Magician of Chaos. He is a 2000, 2600, 8-star spellcaster. During the end phase, if this card was normal or special summoned this turn, you can target 1 spell in your graveyard. Add it to your hand. You can use this effect once per turn. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, after damage calculation, banish that monster. If this face-up card would leave the field, banish it instead. So leave the field is interesting because it doesn't have to be destroyed. Would Crass Clown destroy this card? Like if he bounces him? I think it would banish him.
I think so. I'm not sure how the timing of those effects work, but
yeah,
it seems like otherwise there would be no reason to have that text on him, really, because instead it would just say destroyed, because the only ways for you to leave the field are if you're banished. I guess it could be if you fuse him or something. Yeah. Oh yeah, fuse. Yeah, I guess tributed or destroyed, or it's quicker to just say leave the field. So it could be either way, but I would think that it also means these types of bounce effects.
So there's like a lot of tricky text in, like with Dakini, they get sent to the graveyard, they don't get destroyed, right?
Right, yeah, we've seen that distinction a few times in the game. Another one was the card Wild Tornado, which for a while was really big. It's a difference between those various spells and traps that get effects when they are destroyed versus just when they're sent to the graveyard. And so sending is different than destroying.
Yeah. But anyways, let's talk about the Dark Magician of Chaos. The only way I see this being played is with the Mausoleum of the Emperor, so you could cheat it out. But then you just mentioned the Mokuba Monster Morph, and that does the same thing as Dark Magician, because that's a level 7 spellcaster, and this is a level 8.
Boom.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. It seems like it could be a really cool interaction if we do that. Other things that I noticed were the Stray Lambs interaction, where you can use the lambs to summon him, and then get the lambs back. But the problem with that is that Stray Lambs would require you to set it. So you need some sort of protection either for your lambs or for your Dark Magician of Chaos, or like a double summon or something to make it work. But another option on top of that would also be Soul Exchange, which is pretty similar to how the Monarch deck is doing it now, where you can use the Soul Exchange to kind of cheat this out a little bit, and then in this case halfway, whereas for the Monarchs it's fully cheated out, and then this will get the Soul Exchange back. So it's a nice little interaction in that sense. But
yeah, the card's pretty iconic, and it will be a UR in a mini box, so it wouldn't be too hard to get, I think, just because it's a mini box, and you probably would want to play 3 of them in the deck if you are playing this card. But right now we're not seeing too much potential just because of what we have in the game, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like a card that is pretty good, and we'll probably see some play, but not like break the game or shape the meta in the way that some of the other cards that have been infused into the game have.
Yeah, it's all about speed in this format. So the Cyber Angels are pretty fast, Red Eyes are pretty fast, so those are the problems.
Right.
Another card that was leaked was Birthright, and this is a continuous trap card we've seen in the past from Mokuba, I believe. So activate this card by targeting one normal monster in your graveyard. You can special summon it and face-up attack. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. When that monster leaves the field, destroy this card. So right now we already have a card called Soul Resurrection, which does the same thing, but the monster's in defense mode, and now it's in attack mode. So it gets an attack right away. That's the benefit, I guess.
Right, yeah, it's a bit of an upgrade. Also, most monsters that see play are better in attack position than defense position, so that's another upgrade. But yeah, I mean, it seems like a decent card. You were talking about Call of the Haunted.
Yeah.
That would be better than this, because you could do it in either position.
It doesn't have to be a normal monster, so yeah.
Oh yeah, normal monster too. So yeah, I guess that would be hypothetical power creep.
Could this have use in Red Eye's Balance, like as a 4th spirit?
Yeah. So in my version of the counter trap Red Eye's Balance, I used the Soul, whatever it was called, I think.
Resurrection.
Yeah, Soul Resurrection. I definitely used another Resurrection effect, and I believe it was probably Soul Resurrection. So this would definitely be a better replacement.
Yeah, and because it's a mini box, these are probably the only 2 SRs in the whole box, because I think there are only 2.
I forget exactly how those go, but yeah, there's not many. So usually with the mini box, there's no distinction between super rare and ultra rare for purposes of your collection, because there's one of all of them. The difference, I guess, is if you end up converting them, but it's easier to grab the cards you need.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. There's only one SR in those. That's why you had to buy Dawn of Destiny 3 times.
Yeah. So when I'm looking at Flame Tyrant now, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or sorry, 8 super rares and 2 ultra rares.
Yeah, the Dawn of Destiny, it was Phoenix and someone else.
Dawn of Destiny. Yeah, Phoenix and Tribute of the Doomed. But again, there were 8 super rares, so I would say that that's probably the format. There's going to be 8 different super rares and 2 different ultra rares, and one copy of each of those in each run through of the box.
Yeah. So we're expecting some kind of Gravekeeper, maybe Spellcaster support, possibly, just because of Dark Magician. Yeah, and it's probably gonna come next week or the week after, so we'll see.
Yeah, both of these cards have to do with Graveyard as well. One of them allowing you to resurrect, of course, and the other one preventing people from doing that. So I think a Graveyard theme might be a good call as well.
Yep. And we do have a lot of decks that are relevant to Graveyard Resurrections. And of course, Heavy Knight of Flames is going to be played everywhere, probably. Like it was.
Yeah.
Alright, we have an interesting article of developer insights. We hardly see these from Konami, partially because there is a language barrier, I think. And there probably would be more of this stuff in Japan, and they're more aware of it. But we don't see too many of these compared to other games. Philip Martinez of Player One, which is a website, game website, interviewed producer Kenichi Katauki in the New York Comic Con this week to talk about the upcoming desktop version of Duel Links in the Cyber Angels meta. The article is really short, but there were highlights. It is confirmed that the Konami ID will allow people to transition seamlessly from mobile and desktop. So I believe they force you to make a Konami ID if you don't have one, but you should have one from the data transfer settings in this game, and there's a pretty easy guide on the Duel Links Reddit to tell you how to do that, so make sure you do that. And you'll have all your cards. That was one of the things they stressed, like you won't you won't have to start over again, so that's really good. The Steam version is expected to come early winter, so maybe December, late November, we can expect that. Steam, for those who are not familiar, is a platform on your computer where you get to buy games and download games from a library. So you search the store, you add it to your game, and it installs. So you can play a lot of games on Steam. If you've ever bought the Humble Bundles, they have a lot of cheap Steam games where you can get. So definitely install Steam. There will still be characters added from the original Duel Monsters world. So there's hope for Tristan. That's all I could say about that. They have one expert in Konami whose job is to figure out balance as they add new cards. And it takes a month of balancing before they add cards. Let's talk about this one. This is interesting. They do release cards about once per month. So maybe this set was planned a month before. But one of the main things that is discussed in Hearthstone is how, because they make the card sets in Hearthstone months in advance, as like 3 sets in advance or 2 sets in advance. I forget what they say. But how often they tech cards from that set. If it's a finished product, how often they tech cards to fit the current meta. And it's usually like a couple, I think, in Hearthstone. They mentioned the Skulking Geist as an example. I think Mike Danae said that they put like a few cards to try to adapt. Well, what do you think about this? Like, they know Cyber Angels are really good.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. One difference, of course, between the Hearthstone and Duel Links development process is that in Duel Links they're only using cards that already exist. So I think it makes it substantially quicker because A, they don't have to create new cards, but B, they also have a general idea of the power level, I think, going into it. So that helps explain a little bit why it's quicker, but I was still like appalled that there was one person and that he takes 1 month to balance it. And I don't know if that was maybe just an issue with translation or if that's actually true, but that, like, in my mind, it's a miracle that we have even a relatively balanced game with that information in mind.
The guy must know. He must know a lot about the game. Like, he must be really good at what he does, I think.
Yeah, he's got to be. He is actually an expert because we know that it is very difficult to balance things. The card games have so many moving parts that it is very difficult to balance all of them. Even like relatively so. There's no. I mean, it's really hard to even consider what perfect balance would be in Duel Links since there's so many different skills and so many different characters. You can't even really have a perfect balance. Whereas in Hearthstone, it's kind of easy to say, well, each class should have about 11% representation, ideally. But here, there's still like a solid balance where there's a decent number of good decks, and the best deck, while clearly the best, has some definite counters, so it's not like unbeatable. And like I said, I'm just really impressed by this one dude who is doing such a good job keeping everything pretty balanced.
What I imagine the workspace is like in a TV show or in a movie. It's like a stereotypical. It's like a picture, and then there's like strings of yarn with different colors.
Yeah.
like there's like a million of these like cyber angels. So this counters that. This is gonna show up in the next set or stuff like that. But
yeah, it's like Charlie Day, right? In that one meme from It's Always Sunny, where it's all connected.
Yep. Maybe if the game gets bigger, they'll get some help. But this guy is doing okay right now. But we're not complaining too much. And there are definitely enough cards in Yu-Gi-Oh to balance stuff. The philosophy is more of putting in new cards to supplant effects instead of nerf. There's only been one nerfed card so far, or one restriction. The card wasn't nerfed, but one restriction so far. So they try to do it as little as possible. And if the internal data shows that Cyber Angels are too powerful, they will introduce new cards, that's what we mentioned, to counter it. They will prefer not to ban or restrict Angels. The 1 month timing means that the changes would not likely come before the upcoming Kaiba Cup in November, unless they immediately decided that Cyber Angels were an issue, or had a counter in works before they released Cyber Angels. So we kind of discussed that last week with Enemy Controller, how everyone should have 3 copies now. That's the natural counter to Cyber Angels. But I'm pretty sure the data shows that they have surpassed everyone. Just from my lowly rankings in Platinum, they're all gone. All the Cyber Angels have moved up, and they're either fighting for King of Games or in Legend grinding it out. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have the link to the whole article there if you want to check it out. And these things are pretty cool for you to read. You're always excited about developer insights.
Yeah, I'm like an amateur game dev / game dev fanboy. I've been trying to break into that field for a while, switch my lawyering ways to fight for the good guys. And it's just every time I see something like this, it's really interesting to me. So I got pretty hyped about it. I don't know how much our listeners care about the developer insights, but I do think that point about the 1 month timetable is very relevant to anybody who's considering competing in the KC Cup, because it kind of gives you an idea as to the possible moves that they might do, if any, to address the Cyber Angels prior to the KC Cup.
Right. And another point, a last thing that we're going to talk about today is that there seems to have been an update to drop rates where we are getting more rare cards in terms of SRs and URs, but we are getting fewer gems. A lot of players have found that farming, you included, have found that farming is easier these days because you get more SRs and URs from the drops. And that's definitely the case. I think I have 7 or 8 of the pumpkins already from Bonz.
Wow.
And, people have noticed that gems were reduced for duplicate skills. Apparently, it's down to 5 now instead of 15. And as standalone drops, one person on Reddit, they compiled their stats for farming 2 characters since GX World released. And he found that gem farming has reduced by 50%. Obviously we need a bigger sample size to see if this is the number is confirmed. It's probably lower than that, I assume, but He had some sample size. It's not nothing. There's been no official announcement about it, but he has 100 farms. Yeah, that's not nothing. It's something. It's something you have to notice, but don't believe it completely. I guess that's 100. You need like 1,000 maybe, but there's no arguing that gem farming has been reduced. Is money back?
Yeah, I think this switch is neither inherently good nor inherently bad.
Yeah.
It's all kind of, spokes in the wheel or whatever. But it seems like it's better for limited time roaming duelist type things. Like everyone who makes a reasonable effort to farm Bonz is probably going to get all or most of his cards, for instance, because of this change. But it's another way in which gate keys are becoming obsolete, because we already have, well, not all of us, but I pretty much already have all of the cards
Alexis.
that one would want. Well, yeah, for Alexis, but I was going to say for the entire first gen. And I haven't really started farming the second gen much, but I imagine that will go fairly quickly as well, especially with these updated methods. And then I'm at the cap for the normal keys. And one major way that people were using keys before was to farm gold and gems. And I don't need gold, but I could definitely always use more gems. And if they're reducing the value of gems where you only get, 1 or 5 or whatever per farm, then it's not efficient to do that anymore. And there's yet one fewer reason to be farming people.
Yeah, so basically there's like a trickle down where your keys are even less valuable than before because the gems aren't coming at the pace that they were.
Right. So it's, like I said, it's just another way that I'm going to keep building up this too many keys because it's just not really worth it to even sit down and spend the time to farm these guys for so few gems.
Yeah, I've farmed Chaz and Bastion, and I think Silent Magician works for Bastion, I know for sure, but it's like the same deck, you just adapted a little for each person. That's what I've heard for these GX characters.
Yeah. Like I said, I was using Lab Builder for Alexis, but I agree that they're not super hard to farm, and it's really cool, I guess, in the sense that it makes it a lot easier for a lot of people to play. For instance, Cyber Angels took most people just maybe a couple days to get everything they need, which was cool, except that then it had the problem where a lot of people felt that there was too much Cyber Angels. But I do like that they're making it easier to get the resources. I just wish that there were some other reason than to use these gate keys, because it feels bad that you're kind of wasting resources. And by adding, for instance, all of the things that you would farm into those monthly ticket rewards as well, there's this other source. So I don't need to farm Keith, for instance, because he's kind of annoying, because I can just get all the metamorphs and rare metamorphs through the tickets. And so now, all of those keys are useless. So it's hard to say if this was a bad move, but I do think that in terms of long term, if you look at it overall, this is worse for players, because if you were to look at that long scope, then most players would get all of the farm keys anyway, or the farm cards anyway, and they would be, the only reason why you would continue farming after that is to get the gems and the gold and stuff.
Yeah. So we definitely need an outlet for the keys. Back then there was, before the DD guide, the Dimension Fire Tower event, people were thinking that the DD guide was a way to exchange cards, and that would have been a good way to dump the keys. Maybe with the trader, there could be a way for them to... Well, now you buy keys from the trader, which there's no point in that anymore. There's no way there's no reason to scroll there anymore. But we definitely need a way to spend our keys. All right, so we're going to end for today. Hopefully next week, there will definitely be more to talk about next week with the new Duelist Chronicles event and Duel Links Meta Championship, which will be happening an hour from now. So we will hope to talk about more next week. Shout out to TiagoPaolino for recommending our podcast to fellow Redditors. I noticed there was a refer from the Reddit, so I checked out which Reddit thread it was, and it was from the main sub of Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Not the Duel Links Reddit, and someone was asking for podcasts, and he said, I just found this one. They talk about the Duel Links competitive scene and stuff like that. So thank you, TiagoPaolino, for recommending us. You can find this podcast on the App Store, Google Play, Stitcher, and others. Check out the podcast and more at our website, theduelassessment.wordpress.com. We have a YouTube channel, so you can listen to us there instead. We have a Patreon account. You can help support us. Patreon.com/duel_assessment. Send us an email with any questions. We'd be happy to answer any questions here or online at theduelassessment@gmail.com. Or you could find us on Twitter, duel_assessment, me at GreenRanger HS, and DeckTech at HS DeckTech. Hopefully we'll have more instances where I lose to a 5-headed dragon, so people can see that.
Yeah, that got a lot of engagement, so the people like to see that.
That was so outrageous. I mean, maybe because you have nothing to do right now, you should try to find yourself in ridiculous situations.
I'll see if I can get some good screenshots.
Do you have a 5-headed dragon?
I think I do. I'm not sure.
So just build a dual standby deck with 3 polymerizations and nothing but dragons, maybe Fusion Sage or something, but you could do it.
All right. We'll make it happen for the people.
Yep. All right. That's all for now.
See you guys next time.